Hey everyone, today I'm going to tell you about the myth of Pyramus and Thisbe. And I'm always reminded of this myth in the spring and summer, in part because there's a giant mulberry tree by my house where I live, and we can go down there for about 6 weeks. You can go down with a basket. You can just pick mulberries off the tree, and they're these big, giant, juicy berries. And as I'm picking them, I'm always reminded of this myth because the berries of the mulberry tree used to be white, snow white, but now they're red, and a deep red. And the explanation is told through the myth of Pyramus and Thisbe. So Pyramus and Thisbe were young people. They were teenagers in Babylonia. They were young Babylonians, and each of them was the only child of these two families. And these two families absolutely hated each other. And they've hated each other for generations. They've hated each other for so long, they don't even know why they hate each other. But Pyramus and Thisbe had seen each other, out in town, and they fell in love. And they knew that their love was forbidden. They knew that they couldn't be together because they were the only children of these two feuding families. But what they did discover was that in each of their houses in Babylonia, there was a small room, and that small room contained a wall that this wall separated their two houses from each other. It was the one wall that separated their two houses from each other. And this wall had a crack in it. And it's referred to in myths as the chink in the wall. And so every day, Pyramus and Thisbe would meet at this wall they'd be in their houses and they'd go to this wall and they could talk to each other through the chink in this wall. And sometimes they would curse the wall. They would say, God, if it weren't for this wall, we could see each other, we could hold each other, but we should be grateful because at least the wall has provided this chink so we could talk to each other. And my loving words can reach your sweet ears, and at least we can communicate that way. Well, one day these two decide we've had enough. We need to be together and forget this feud. We love each other. We need to get out of here. So they make up a plan that evening they were going to meet at a famous landmark outside Babylonia called Ninus's tomb. And at the tomb, there's a big tree, a big mulberry tree, and there's like a creek, like a river there. And so it'd be easy to find, and they know where it is. So that was the plan for the evening. So that evening, everyone's asleep. Thisbe puts her cloak on, she wraps herself up, and she sneaks out of the house, goes to Ninus's tomb. And as she's getting to the tomb and approaching the tree, she sees the creek and she sees a lioness at the creek drinking. And Thisbe startles the lioness, and the lioness looks up, and Thisbe sees that there's blood all over her mouth. She just made a fresh kill. She was at the water slaking her thirst. Well, Thisbe, of course, is startled and runs off into the hills because she doesn't want to disturb this lioness. So she runs off into the hills, and in her hurry to get away, she drops her cloak. Well, the lioness comes up to see what it is, and she starts mouthing it and kind of tearing at it a little bit. And just then, the lioness hears a noise, and she looks up, and here comes Pyramus. And the lioness drops the cloak and takes off. Well, Pyramus comes up, and he's looking around for Thisbe, and he doesn't see her, but what he does see is her cloak there on the ground, and it's got blood on it, and it's been torn. And the only conclusion he can come to is that he got here too late, that she has been attacked and dragged off and devoured by a lion. And he is so overcome with grief and guilt that he's never going to see her again, and that he wasn't there to protect her. He takes out his dagger and he stabs himself in the heart, and he drops dead and dies right underneath that mulberry tree. Well, a few minutes later, literally a minute later, Thisbe starts to come out of the forest because she doesn't want to let Pyramus down, and she doesn't want to miss him. And so she sneaks back. She doesn't see the lioness, so she runs back to the mulberry tree and to the creek. And it's there that she sees her Pyramus lying dead underneath the tree, and she sees her cloak. He has it in his hands, and she starts to put the two together and realizes the misunderstanding and realizes what happened. And she is angry at herself for not being more courageous, for not being on time. And in her heartbreak, she picks up Pyramus's dagger and she stabs herself. And she dies right there next to Pyramus underneath the mulberry tree. And as these two lovers stabbed themselves, their blood spurts all over the tree, turning the white berries red. And that is how we got the red berries on the mulberry tree. In this painting, this is Thisbe, obviously. She's got her ear right up against, you can see the crack in the wall right there. You can also see other things. It's a small room, but this is where she would probably have some privacy. Here you see her loom, and you see her threads and needles down here. That's women's work, and those are symbols of womanhood, certainly in ancient Greece. And so you can see the small room where she and Pyramus talk to each other. And so as Thisbe gets to, there's the mulberry tree. Here we can see the creek, and there's the lioness, and we can see that she dropped her cloak down here, and we can see her bloody mouth as she's tearing at the cloak, and Thisbe running away in fear. We can see it's not too far from the town of Babylonia here. And so now, as she's hiding in these rocks and in the trees, she's waiting for Pyramus to show up. I really like this painting here because it has all the main players of the myth. The first and foremost, what takes up most of the picture is the mulberry tree. And then we have the lioness here. We have the creek right down here. You can see the water running. And here's Pyramus. He's already stabbed himself. You can see the cloak right next to him, the bloody cloak that's got the tears in it. And here is Thisbe with her arms up in anguish. So there's the mulberry tree, the lioness, Thisbe's bloody veil. There's Pyramus lying dead with his dagger and with the cloak, and Thisbe's arms raised up in anguish. I like this painting too because it is more modern, but one of the things that I really like about it is the mulberry tree. And you'll notice that the berries up at the top are white, and it's the ones down here that are now red. Thisbe's torn and bloody veil, which is the object that led to the wrong conclusion and the misunderstanding, and the rash decision to kill themselves, is there in the picture as well. And then, of course, we have the final moments of these two young, beautiful lovers who acted rashly. This is just a quick summary of the myth. I hope there's something about this myth that sounds familiar, like maybe something about the storyline of this myth might sound vaguely familiar.